Who is this coming to the ash pit, walking tall as if in a procession, bearing in front of her a slender pan, withdrawn just now from underneath the firebox, weighty, full to the brim with whitish dust and flakes still sparking hot? That the wind is blowing into her apron bib, into her mouth and eyes while she proceeds, unwavering, keeping her burden horizontal still, hands in a tight, sore grip around the metal knob, proceeds until we have lost sight of her, where the worn path turns behind the henhouse. Who is this, not much higher than the cattle, working his way towards me through the pen, his ash plant in one hand, lifted and pointing, a stick of keel in the other, calling to where I'm perched on top of a shaky gate, waving and calling something I cannot hear, of all the lowing and roaring, lorries revving at the far end of the yard, the dealers shouting among themselves, and now to him, so that his eyes leave mine, and I know the pain of loss before I know the term. I was just reading from Seamus Heaney's poem, Uncoupled. Welcome to episode 2 of Comma Splice. I'm your host, Winston Lee. For those of you joining us for the first time, Comma Splice is a podcast variety show divided up into individual segments, each one focused on a work of creative writing. Each episode revolves around a single theme. Afterwards, there will be a panel discussion regarding this afternoon's theme in regards to each author's individual segment. Comma Splice is a joint project between the Kwantlen Creative Writing Guild, of which I am one of the executive members of, and Radio Free Kwantlen, Kwantlen student radio broadcasting station run by Kimberly McMartin. Before I reveal this afternoon's theme, I, on behalf of the Guild and Comma Splice, would like to send our gratitude towards Kimberly McMartin and Radio Free Kwantlen for helping us set up the recording and for the long hours spent during the editing process. Unfortunately, my co-host Chantal Hull will be absent this afternoon due to an illness, but I'd like to send thanks her way for generating the questionnaire material for the panel discussion. I'd also like to thank all the Guild members whose feedback on each of the segments during the workshop process was invaluable. Finally, thank you to Andrew Liller for designing Comma Splice's logo. Our readers for episode 2 will be Matt Cruikshank and Caitlin Herbst-Reed. This afternoon's episode is Echoes. Whether it be through the mourning of a lost family member or the confessional poetics of tracing the deviant rites of adolescence, both our authors perceive their sense of generation as vibrations through time, where past transgressions reverberate into present-day dilemmas. A lover of imagination, coffee, and beer, Matt Cruikshank, first story he ever wrote was about him kicking ass in a lacrosse game. He's been doing the same thing to life ever since.
Thanks, Winston. Family camping. The shocks of the 95 Nissan Pathfinder creak cruising down a dirt road on the west side of Harrison. The 10K marker appears out of the wild foliage. The destination is an abandoned scout camp that your family reserves every year on Labor Day weekend. Todd, a childhood friend, is in the passenger seat. He has been coming on most family camping trips since elementary school, missing a year here and there. The back seat of the Pathfinder is loaded with camping gear. The song Little Black Submarines by the Black Keys plays from the Shuffle playlist. It brings back memories of a trip to Coachella years ago. The song holds a much different meaning to Todd. His ex loved this band, this song. Together you sit in the awkward duality of emotion as the song reaches its epic crescendo and then ends. Bob Marley comes on and immediately soothes the situation into neutrality. This duality of emotion cuts into the excitement of the looming camping trip. A significant family member will be missing this year. Grandma is traveling with you. She is wedged in between the seats, rigidly sticking out of the center console. She is in an urn. Grandma worked in a residential school early on in her life. Later, she became a social worker at a group home that housed primarily Aboriginal youth. She was a major advocate of Indigenous people's rights. As a child, you spent many weekends with her and the group of young people. Sometimes she would take the group on outings to fish hatcheries or nature reserves. Once she took everyone out on a tour of the Stave Falls powerhouse. She was a teacher to both you and the youth she was responsible for. In turn, she learned a lot from them. They taught her how to fish and deepened her connection with the natural environment. It was a part of her being. She passed these values down to her own children, which were then passed on to her grandchildren. You take the turn off at 13K and head downhill towards the lake. The camp is a big circle pit opening where the trees meet the rocky beach. The shoreline itself curves like a crescent moon, which creates a bay. The water is shallow. There is an abandoned mess hall type building that usually serves as the camp's kitchen or cooking area. The sun is shining off the lake through the trees. The water is silver in the shallow bay. It turns to a mystic green as the water gets deeper, which masks the ominous ice cold of the 60-kilometer-long lake. It has taken 2 lives this summer, adding to the mournful tone of the weekend. Uncle Larry waves as he is setting up his camper. I wish she was here one last time, you say with a deep frown. Where are they going to do the ceremony? Todd asks, staring down at the urn. Probably at the runoff stream that's down the beach a ways. She always snuck away to paint down there. Together you start to unload the Pathfinder. Todd pulls out the tent bag and starts fitting the loose ends of the tent poles together. She really did like it up here, you say, as you slide a pole into the flat tent sleeve. She liked it anywhere, man, as long as it was outdoors, in nature, Todd replies. A smile breaks your lips as the tent takes form. You remember that time at Chilliwack Lake, when she took us out on the canoe, you ask? Yeah, and the wind came out of nowhere. It almost tipped us. No, she knew it was coming. She did row like hell to get us back to shore, you say. Todd clips one side of the fly down and you do the same. Well, now that that's done, shall we? Todd goes directly for the cooler and grabs 2 kokanee beers. He tosses one at you but stops your hand from popping the tab. He dangles his lanyard, which jingles loudly. Come on, dude, we're not 19 anymore, you say. First beer is a shotgun. It's tradition, he replies. You smile and extend the blade of a pocket knife. Together you guzzle the beers down, beating Todd by a fraction of a second. By the time the empty beers are discarded, a convoy of trucks and trailers are coming down the sloping, rocky road. The last car is a black Mercedes-Benz SUV. Who's driving the Merc? Todd asks, with his eyebrows cocked. I think it's my grandma's lawyer, you reply. He is speaking about the final arrangements on her behalf. The fire is roaring almost a meter high after dinner. Your sister, Olivia, made some smokies cooked over a portable propane stove for her husband, Randy, and their 2 daughters, ages 3 and 6. Uncle Larry has a big cooking pot filled with corn that he ate with his wife, Angela. She laughs and picks corn from her teeth. Mom offers to make you and Todd a cold-cut sandwich while Dad comes out of the trailer, sporting a yellow mustard stain on his wool sweater vest. It's camping. You're supposed to get messy, he says, and takes a sip of his beer. It is snugly wrapped in a koozie that is shaped like a prescription pill bottle. It reads, recommended dosage, 1 every hour. You and Todd each pull back the lid to a can of Chef Boyardee. With a stick, you poke some logs in the fire out of the way and feel the warmth of the exposed orange coals. You both place the canned pasta in the fire the way Grandma used to, and then sit down in vacant folding chairs. This trip will serve as a tribute to her memory. Todd stirs his Dixie cup with his finger, and the ice clanks together. Gradually, everyone pulls a chair up to the fire. Cousin Alex is in the middle of telling his story about the time Grandma beat him in an arm wrestle when he was a teenager. The lawyer steps into the circle. He is wearing snug dress pants and a black cotton peacoat. He is much older than everyone around the fire. A receding hairline sits well above his wrinkled forehead. A wisp of white hair won't sit still in the wind. With every orange pair of eyes set on him, he clears his throat. As most of you know, my name is Carter Donaldson. I was first and foremost a good friend of the late Geraldine Tucker. Secondly, I was her lawyer for many years. Eyes flicker around the fire, but mouths stay silent. Your eyes stay fixed on the fire, still grappling with her absence. I am affectionately in charge of the ceremony tomorrow, where we will spread Geraldine's ashes into the stream and out into the great deep lake. It was one of her few last requests. The ceremony will start at 8 a.m. Also, I have an announcement to make about the family estate and inheritance. What inheritance? She pissed it all away at the casino and earthquake supplies, Aunt Jackie says. Mom hisses and Dad puts his arm around her shoulder. There's still the house. It's a lot of property, Uncle Larry chimes in, and the murmur around the fire reaches its peak. Carter clears his throat to calm them. I have documentation that proves that Geraldine's last and most exciting wish was for the family to have a camp-out competition. The recipients of the inheritance will be determined by this competition. You may work together, such as with your spouse or other relative, or if you choose so, independently. If you are not directly related to the family, then you are not eligible to compete. But you may help anyone you choose to complete a challenge. What are the terms of these games? Uncle Larry asks. There will be specific challenges that reflect Geraldine's love and attitude towards the natural environment. The first challenge will begin immediately after the ash spreading ceremony, and they will continue over the next 2 days. The person or team who completes the most challenges will win the inheritance. She was a beautiful woman, but this is batshit crazy. How can this be legal? Dad asks. Trust me, Alan, she was determined. I'm obliged to ensure that her final wish is carried through. If no one wishes to participate, then her entire estate shall be donated to a program that feeds Indigenous youth living on BC reservations. Do we have an agreement? Yes, bursts out of you before anyone else can answer. Everyone's eyes close in on you in a direct line of motion. This is a chance to prove how strong her love and influence was. I'm in, Mom says. I will help you with whatever you need, my love, Dad says. What the hell, why not, Uncle Larry says. Me too, your sister Olivia. Screw it. One more time for Nana, Cousin Alex says. Okay, so it's settled. Everyone competing, please meet at the back of my car so the proper paperwork can be filled out. Get a good rest for the first challenge in the morning. The family excitedly files to the back of his SUV, infused with a new sense of competition. You hope it doesn't overpower the memory of her, but the challenge is a welcome distraction from all the grieving. In the morning, Mom holds the urn as Carter finishes formally addressing everyone. There is a long silence. The wind is blowing, and the sky is a rough gray. It is clear that summer is on its last legs. Mom walks up and tilts the urn over the mouth of the creek. It is lively moving, and water bubbles on the rocks at everyone's feet. Your vision begins to narrow. With a clouded head, you can't tell if you're standing, balanced in one spot, or floating and swaying with the wind. Are your feet firmly planted onto the earth, or could you slip into the wind and take on the form of the stream rushing at your feet? The first challenge is set to begin.
That was Matt Cruikshank reading from his short story, Family Camping Trip. Matt, what do you believe some of the positive attributes of your generation are?
Well, I believe this generation is definitely more inclusive than generations of the past, referring to the rights of people with disabilities or even like LGBT communities. It's definitely more accepting and inclusive community than before.
Caitlin Herbst Reed is a first-year student at Kwantlen Polytechnic University who finds joy in the art of writing. She loves every type of writing, but prefers to write fiction and spoken word pieces. On her bucket list, she has the dream of publishing her own book. Caitlin inspired to become a writer from reading. She's able to read a 400-page book in under 5 hours if she has the time. She also enjoys eating Japanese food and looking at online artwork.
Thanks, Justin. I was told the exact words, go dig a hole and die. It was 3:47 p.m. when I checked my social media accounts, my daily routine of coming home, dropping my backpack, and entering the online world. I never expected to be reading this message. I never expected to tell my mom. I never expected to cry in arms. I never expected. The week went by in a blur, I in a stone-like state, not knowing how to comprehend the situation. What was worse was I never knew what was at first. The internet is an artificial, critical, boisterous, charming creation filled with cowardly, egotistical, impulsive, warm-hearted people who hide behind their computers, plan like strike, or slaves, prisoners, and heartbroken lovers. 2 weeks went by till they found the culprit. I knew who they were, I knew they bullied me, and I knew that I finally stood up. One day during those 2 weeks, I asked my parents if they were bullied, if they knew the feeling how unappealing it is. They explained their generation how internet was just introduced, how cell phones were not in use, how social media was not produced. It was face-to-face contact, nothing more. It made me feel lucky that our generation nothing compared to theirs. No help, no aid, no assistance, no support. Even if cyberbullying is our imitation, facial expression was their weapon. Bullying is the same no matter if it's 30 years ago or today. Calling someone fat will make you skinnier. Calling someone ugly will make you prettier. Calling someone stupid will make you smarter. Calling someone loner will make you popular. Parents are oblivious these days. They think it's a phase, an accurate maze, something that will blaze away. Young people these days don't know the trouble of the actions they make. They think their parents will solve their mistakes. You make a mistake, that's okay. You make a mistake, that's okay. You make a mistake, that's okay. You make a mistake? That's not okay. Now, I don't think kids are to blame. Parents also have a say in who they become. Generations of teaching are built into them. While values and morals these kids should believe, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, the light and the dark, and the strong and the weak. How they should defend themselves in the harsh reality called life. Instead of believing that high school would teach them all skills, why not become their partner, their leader, and their teammate? Both parents and people should be taught this one belief. Bullying is not right. No way, no might. I will not be defined. Thank you, my generation. Thank you for the Don't Judge Me challenge, the drinking challenge, the fire challenge, the fainting challenge, the cinnamon challenge, the Still Nice challenge, even the twerking challenge. We're all wrapped around the entertainment of these, laughing and giggling, not caring of their well-being. But how could you? You don't know them, and they don't know you. But it's still right to watch these videos and laugh at their pain, spice coating their esophagus, not able to breathe, the white of their eyes and limp, numb bodies. If I could choose to blame on my generation, the answer is easy. Social media. Now, before I'm sweared at or yelled at or have things run on me, I've had enough. Now, let me explain. There's a good and bad in everything made. We ourselves choose a side around every day. It's easy to be someone else behind a screen. It's easy to say what we feel, have no regret not to be seen. All of us are influenced by the generation before us, our parents, our grandparents, and our uncle and aunts. We're taught what is right and wrong from a young age, who does like and like, who to treat nice and not. I hear from both my parents and grandparents what's wrong with kids these days. New pics being exposed and underage drinking, taking whatever without thinking. 11-year-olds cake-based and at third base. Why are teenagers smoking joints in the first place? They see they do. We see we do. Social nectar stories, social connection. We're infected by the internet with no detection. Make a mistake and think they can patch up with tape. Just great. Just great. Dangerous, damaging, ruthless, and wicked. The one half of media exposed, the other half enclosed. Imagine someone dear, far from your reach, domestic technology not being in reach, connection lost if private talking to another. There are benefits in media today. Email is quicker than sending a letter. Skype is used for chat when they're not near. Twitter, Instagram, Vine, and Snapchat, ways to keep in touch with family, friends, and maybe even fans. I pondered something great, helping our grandparents and parents in developing new tricks, and inspiring children to use technology effectively and right. I want to change, I want to change, I want a change. I find the source of our human existence, one thing consists of consistence, and that we're all battling fear. Fear of the worst. Fear of the unexpected. This unknown fear of gravitational force. Thanks.
That was Caitlin Herbst Reed reading from her poems, Generations of Bullying and I Will Not Be Defined. That you would change about your generation?
Well, there's a couple of things I mentioned in the poem, the spoken word that I developed myself. But I think one thing is like how we communicate with each other. There seems to be a lot of trouble when you're with others and stuff, how you talk face to face. It seems a lot more shy and awkward because you're so used to just texting or communicating on Facebook, all the social media. But when it comes to actually meeting the people, it has this awkward atmosphere. And I believe that we should get back maybe and use the older generation's way of how they used to call each other and actually meet face to face instead of just using social media to kind of hang with each other in a way.
Yeah, thank you. Be doing the Q&A portion now, and these last three questions will be for both our authors. Has a certain generation or movement influenced your writing? For example, baby boomers, beat poetry, classic film, classic rock?
Well, for me, definitely the modern era writers such as Flannery O'Connor or Hemingway have influenced my work. Modern era writers really knew how to tell it as it is. They could cut to the action and build character.
I think mine's more like towards kind of movement and maybe bullying in a way. When I was talking about my generation of bullying poem, how kind of that has changed over the years. Most of my influence came kind of from what my parents and my grandparents said, and like a lot of older people and a lot of spoken words I've watched online about generations. And I got a lot of ideas off those social media accounts too, like different videos that they posted about it and how other feels about it.
Do you think that other generations have something to learn from us?
Well, for other generations to learn from us, I would like to see maybe a shift away from greed. In my story, there is an aspect of greed with the challenge competing for the inheritance, but ultimately I try to portray a character who would rather pay homage and validate his late grandma's influence on him rather than the monetary value. That would obviously be a perk of the challenge, but to the character it's deeper than just money. He wants to pay homage and celebrate his grandma's life.
Definitely for me, I think we should all learn something from each generation. But yeah, there's a lot that we can take from an older generation, because a lot of older generation believe that we're kind of lazy and we don't want to learn stuff, but that's not true. In all cases, there's a lot of us that really want to learn and grow and really help out people in this generation who people perceive as not being like the best generation, which is true in some cases, but not all cases.
And finally, is there a feature of older generations that you would like to carry into ours?
For me, there's not really a specific feature. However, I think it's important to respect the value and traditions of older generations as we move forward building a different society than they lived in. Their guidance is crucial, and we have to respect their values and continue to include every individual and respect them.
I was thinking about that a lot too, but I think the one thing that I would like carried on from the other generations is their work ethic, because it seems that a lot of us in our generation are getting a lot of stuff handed to us, and I think that because I grew up in a home where if I want something, I had to work towards it. So I think kind of this generation should learn to work towards what they want instead of having a lot of stuff handed to them.
Thank you for answering the questions.
No problem.
Thank you to Matt Cruikshank and Caitlin Herbst for reading and making the Generations episode of Comma Splice possible. Comma Splice will return in the spring for episode 3. We'll end this afternoon with me reading an excerpt from my memoir, Beneath Our Skin. The gore beneath the towel was an accident, but it was still the first time my father had harmed my body. 5 years later, on a hot summer afternoon, my father, brother, and I packed peppers into boxes in the greenhouse. My father was late for his delivery, and he screamed at my brother and I. He threw a box at my brother, but it missed his head by inches. In retaliation, my brother threw the box back. It hit my father's head. I wedged myself between my brother and father as their hands clawed at each other like a pair of rabid dogs. Neither of them would give up until at least one of them was hurt. I ran away and shouted out for my mother. My mother and sister came out and heard a thud, my father punching my brother in the face. He did not look at my brother, but at the red spot on his face. This was all he ever did. I pulled away from him and hobbled back to my seat. I knew people were staring, but I didn't care what they thought. I sat there with my head bent down and looked straight at the floor. I did look up again, eventually, and was sitting down, as if nothing had transpired between the two of us. It was not like I wanted him to scream at me as he had always done to my mother and brother, but I wished he would talk to me instead of dragging and hauling me across the room. My sister always told me that I should try talking to him myself, let our words crawl beneath each other's skin. I'd never sat down with him for coffee in the morning and had a conversation with him that didn't concern my bad grades in math or why I never watched the news. As I grew older, I avoided these discussions by eating my bowl of cereal or toast in my bedroom. Although he was born in Vietnam, my father always spoke to me in English. I never learned to speak in my native language, but understood every word of it when my father or mother spoke. Since I was born and raised in Canada, English was my first language, but I listened closely to Vietnamese. There was not much of a cultural divide between my father and I. Instead, our silence was born from his own upbringing. Fathers were supposed to teach their sons the things they learned from their fathers. There were times when I was first learning to ride a bicycle or solve a complex math equation when my father would tell me that he had learned to do everything on his own and he should abide by these same truths. The only thing I knew about my grandfather was that he would also throw glasses across the room, and my father was estranged from him. I didn't even know if my grandfather was alive or dead. My father returned to his seat. The stench of cigarettes clung to him and replaced the disinfectant in the air. I was used to the smoke, though. It was his smell, his breath, his cologne. When I was a child, I remembered him lighting the pale end of a Marlboro. Burnt ashes fell from the incinerated edge. I feared that if I breathed in too much of the smoke, a hunger and craving for nicotine would surface later in my life. It never did. My eldest sister Jessica, on the other hand, consumed the smoke as if it were oxygen. I don't know when she had her first cigarette, but I noticed it for the first time after my father punched his fist through the wall beside her bedroom when she came home late one night. After that, she came home late every night with the smell of smoke clinging to her jacket. When Jessica finally moved out, the hole was still there. The smoke lingered but began to fade. My father and I watched the clock. 3 years later, I was at the same hospital again after I discovered a halibut bone lodged inside my throat. It was summer again, and my father and I traded no words the car ride to the hospital. We left as soon as we came. We drove off to the dark roads with ease, since there was barely any traffic at that time of night. I swallowed my saliva countless times, so I could feel the bone that was stuck in my flesh. We stopped at Safeway, where my father bought a loaf of bread. When we returned to the car, he tore off a chunk of bread and rolled it into a ball between his palms. He pulled out a napkin from the glove department and handed me the ball bread. It was the size of a golf ball, thick and white. He told me to hold on to the napkin in my other hand. When the bread comes down to your throat midway, spit it out onto the napkin, my father told me. I moved to the edge of my seat and backed up against the car door. I tilted my head away from my father, but he grabbed my jaw, squeezed my cheeks, and forced my mouth open. I expected him to shove the ball down my throat. Instead, he left it inside my mouth, clenched between my teeth. Once he removed his hand from my jaw, I took in a couple deep breaths and swallowed down the bread. I gagged, but then spat it out onto the napkin. After coughing and taking a long, deep breath, I could no longer feel the bone against my throat. The bread had pushed it down into my stomach. Before I could gaze at my father, I realized we were back on the road again. I wrapped up the damp and lumpy bread inside the napkin. I clenched and scrunched it in my hand. "Thank you," I said. "Just glad you're okay," my father whispered. I rolled down the window and discarded the napkin into the night. The nurse finally called my name. I followed my father to the dank hospital bedroom. I lay down on the bed and twitched my toe back and forth so I could feel what it felt like before. The doctor had a strange accent. His English wasn't fractured, but there were hints of something foreign in his voice. He took an x-ray of my toe to check if there were any broken bones. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait that long, and was glad, because I wouldn't have enough patience to endure my father's perpetual silence any longer. The doctor returned and told us that I needed stitches. He had to freeze my toe first. The world inside my head was silent, even though I could still hear the doctors and patients babbling. The doctor pulled out a pair of scissors, gleaming beneath the fluorescence. I didn't even feel the blade sniff off the skin. The doctor dabbed a small cloth in water to clean the blood caked across the side of my toe. He then filled a syringe with a translucent liquid. It looked like water, and so I believed it would be painless. I looked up again at the sharp needle and realized he was going to have to press it into my skin. I felt the needle penetrate into the gash. I bit my tongue to feel something else, but then my toe felt numb, as if the blood inside it crystallized like a frozen lake. The second time I felt the needle, I cringed, but although I was supposed to feel numb, I felt a different pain that was heavier. My father's calloused hand gripped onto my knee. The dry, flaky skin across his palm was rough as the jagged wood that sliced open my toe. I forgot about the needle and numbness. With a needle and a length of red thread, the doctor began to stitch. I thought about the hole in the wall beside Jessica's old bedroom. I thought of how my father punched my brother across the face. I felt the weight of his tempered love. When the stitches were finished, I saw how the lines intertwined.